The Harmony, a massive interstellar vessel housing the Concord Council chamber, drifted silently through space. Through its enormous glass windows, the blue-green nebula cast an ethereal glow across the faces of delegates from dozens of species. Commander Lam Mai stood at the back of the Grand Hall, watching as various alien representatives debated the finer points of interstellar trade agreements. No one paid much attention to the human delegation. 50 years had passed since the great zombie plague of 2115 had nearly wiped out humanity. Now, in 2165, Earth was a peripheral member of the Galactic Concord, often considered strange due to its violent past. Mai's eyes scanned the room, finding her companions, Dr. Puang Dong and Major Wei, looking equally disinterested in the proceedings. "Another day of being ignored," Wei whispered, his tall frame leaning slightly toward Mai. "They've put our presentation on Earth's medical advances at the end of the agenda again." Mai nodded, her short black hair framing a face hardened by decades of military service. As a former commander of Earth's pandemic response force, she had been chosen as the human representative to the Concord, but most alien species still viewed humans as primitive newcomers. "Dr. Dong," Mai said quietly, "is your presentation ready? In case they actually let us speak this time." Dr. Dong, a slender woman with intense eyes that revealed her brilliant mind, nodded. The daughter of the two scientists who had created the vaccine that saved Earth, she carried both their legacy and their expertise in virology. "They'll listen eventually," Dong said, with more hope than conviction. "Our medical advances in viral containment are—" She was interrupted by a sudden commotion at the front of the hall. An emergency broadcast flickered across the main screen, showing chaotic scenes from a planet called Jorath, one of the core Concord members. Reports flooded in of a strange disease. Jorathians were waking in the middle of the night, attacking villagers and local wildlife with a savagery that the announcer described as the dead refusing to rest. The chamber erupted in panic. The Concord Council members, accustomed to centuries of peace, were suddenly faced with something they had no experience handling, an outbreak that spread faster than their quarantine protocols could contain. Mai felt a chill run down her spine as she watched the footage. The shambling figures, the mindless attacks, the spreading infection. It was all too familiar. "Zombies," she whispered to Dong. "They have a zombie outbreak." For the first time since humans had joined the Concord, all eyes turned toward the Earth delegation. The council president, a tall Vecti with translucent skin that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, approached them. "Commander Mai," the president said, voice trembling slightly. "Your species has experience with this type of situation, yes?" Mai exchanged glances with Dong and Wei. After decades of being marginalized, Earth was suddenly the center of attention, for the worst possible reason. "Yes," Mai replied, standing straighter. "We do." Within hours, the Concord Council had formally requested Earth's assistance. Mai, Dong, and Wei were assigned to lead Team Immunize, a rapid response unit consisting of 20 Earth specialists and representatives from 5 Concord species: Vecti, Quellian, Dracor, Coralline, and Zen. Their training grounds at Luna Base were a stark contrast to the Harmony's elegance. Mud-filled obstacle courses, zombie simulation firing ranges, and emergency medical facilities filled the lunar complex. For 48 hours, the team prepared for their mission to Jorath. "The Concord has never faced anything like this," Mai addressed the assembled team. "They've known peace for so long, they've forgotten how to fight. But we remember." She gestured to the holographic display showing Jorath's surface, a world of dense forests and rocky mountains, with cities built of metal and stone. "Zombie containment has 3 phases," Mai continued. "Identify, isolate, neutralize. Dr. Dong will lead our scientific response team to develop a vaccine. Major V will coordinate logistics and supply lines. I'll command our frontline containment efforts. Shiva, a Quellian healer with 6 arms and iridescent scales, raised a hand. "Commander, our medical philosophy values preservation of all life. Surely, there must be a way to cure, rather than destroy these afflicted individuals." Mai's expression hardened. "I hope so. But until then, we contain the threat by any means necessary. I've seen entire cities fall in hours because people hesitated." Rick, a crystalline Corellan scientist whose body refracted light into rainbow patterns, spoke next. "Our energy-based weapons should be sufficient for neutralization. The crystalline beam technology can—" "No," Mai interrupted. "Kinetic weapons only. Bullets. Energy weapons don't reliably stop zombies. You need to destroy the brain." The alien representatives exchanged uncomfortable glances. Violence was foreign to most conquered species. Lin, their Zen pilot, resembling a humanoid with avian features, looked skeptical. "You speak from experience, Commander." Mai's eyes darkened. "Yes, personal experience." The journey to Jorath took 48 hours in their high-speed vessel. As they approached the planet, Lin guided them through atmospheric entry, providing aerial reconnaissance of Jora City, the outbreak's epicenter. "The situation has deteriorated," Lin reported. "I'm seeing mass movement in the streets. Buildings on fire. The central district appears to be completely overrun." Mai studied the tactical display. "Take us down in the western district. The hospital there looks defensible." As their ship descended, Mai caught her first glimpse of the devastation below. Bodies littered the streets. Military blockades had been established around the city's perimeter, with armed forces maintaining a strict no-entry, no-exit policy that seemed to be failing as desperate civilians attempted to flee. They landed near the makeshift field hospital, where they were met by Brigadier General Loraz, the commander of Jorath's defense forces. The tall, reptilian officer's demeanor was one of barely concealed contempt. "Earth tactics won't work here," Loraz said as they disembarked. "Our medical technology is far superior to yours. We simply need assistance containing the outbreak while our scientists develop a cure." Mai bit back a retort. "We'll need to see the infected immediately." The field hospital was a chaotic assembly of tents and metal containers, woefully undersupplied and overwhelmed with patients. Dr. Dong immediately set to work examining blood samples from the infected, while Mai and Wei assessed the security situation. "The virus is airborne and transmitted through bite wounds," Dong reported after her initial analysis. "It affects multiple species, which is unusual, and it's evolving rapidly." Shiva, who had been assisting Dong, looked troubled. "I've never seen anything like this. It attacks the central nervous system, hijacks motor functions, but leaves enough brain activity to maintain primitive hunting behaviors." Rick joined them, his crystalline form casting prismatic patterns across the laboratory walls. "My energy weapons theory might still work, if we tune the beams to the specific frequency of—" "We don't have time for experiments," Mai interrupted. "We need to secure this facility and establish a perimeter. Major Ve, what's our weapon situation?" Ve, who had been inventorying their supplies, frowned. "Limited. The conquered officials were reluctant to send heavy weaponry. They're still hoping for a healing approach, rather than destruction." Mai cursed under her breath. "Typical. They ask for our help but won't give us the tools we need." As night fell, the situation in Jora City deteriorated rapidly. The perimeter guards were overwhelmed, and thousands of infected residents now roamed the streets, their howls echoing through the darkness. Team Immunize split into 2 groups. Mai led Ve, Drakar, a Dracor representative, and Lin to defend the western approach to the field hospital, while Dong remained inside with Shiva, Rick, and the other Earth scientists, working desperately to isolate the virus and develop a vaccine. The first wave of zombies arrived shortly after midnight, hundreds of infected Jorathians shambling toward the hospital barricades. Mai took position at the front line, her pulse rifle raised. "Hold until they reach the outer marker," she ordered. "Then aim for the head. Conserve ammunition." When the horde reached the designated point, Mai gave the order. "Fire!" The sound of gunfire shattered the night. Zombies fell by the dozen, but more kept coming. Mai fought with mechanical precision, each shot finding its mark. But memories flashed through her mind. Cities burning, families torn apart, her own brother turning before her eyes. V noticed her momentary hesitation. "Commander, eastern flank." Mai snapped back to the present, redirecting her fire to stop a group of zombies that had broken through. The battle raged for hours, a desperate struggle to keep the hospital secure. Inside the makeshift laboratory, Dong worked frantically to understand the virus. Blood samples, tissue cultures, genetic sequencing, all pointed to a terrifying conclusion. "It's mutating," she told Shiva, her face pale with exhaustion. "The virus has already developed resistance to standard vaccines. We're going to need something completely new." Shiva, whose people valued healing above all else, struggled with the implications. "How long until we can develop a treatment?" "Days, maybe weeks," Dong replied. "And that's if we're lucky." "We don't have weeks," Shiva said, looking out the window at the battle raging outside. "We may not even have days." The crisis point came during the second night. A massive horde of infected broke through the western barricade, threatening to overwhelm the hospital. Mai made a desperate decision, ordering the use of their ship's cargo tractor as a makeshift weapon. "Clear the area!" she shouted into her comm. Drakkar, fall back to position 2." The cargo tractor activated with a high-pitched whine, its powerful magnetic field pulling metal debris from the surrounding area. When enough wreckage had accumulated, Mai reversed the polarity, sending the deadly shrapnel hurtling toward the zombie horde. The explosion of blood and tissue was horrific. Over 200 zombies were destroyed in an instant. But the blast also caught civilians and Concord soldiers who had been too slow to evacuate. In the aftermath, Mai stood amid the carnage, her uniform spattered with blood. Shiva approached, her normally serene face contorted with anger. "Was this necessary?" she demanded. "All these lives. If the zombies had reached the hospital, we would have lost everything," Mai replied, her voice hollow. "Including any chance of a vaccine." Shiva stared at the destruction, struggling with the concept. "There must have been another way." "There wasn't," Ve said, joining them. Having lost his own brother to Earth's zombie outbreak, he understood Mai's decisions better than most. Sometimes, survival means making impossible choices. As dawn broke, Dr. Dong made a breakthrough. The virus had indeed mutated beyond their initial understanding. But she had identified a potential pathway for a serum that could prevent infection. "It's not a cure," she explained to the team, "but it could provide immunity to those not yet infected. Buy us time to develop something more permanent." With Shiva's help, Dong began developing a preliminary serum, working against the clock as reports came in of new outbreak zones across Jarath. The planet's cities were implementing lockdown procedures, but panic was spreading faster than containment efforts could manage. Cultural and political barriers complicated their work. When Mai requested additional weapons and supplies, she was met with resistance from Concord officials who still believed in healing rather than destroying. "Your military approach is causing as much harm as the disease," one official accused during a video conference. Mai's patience had worn thin. "While you debate ethics, people are dying. The infected can't be saved. They can only be stopped from infecting others." Rick, who had been observing the situation, finally abandoned his energy weapon theories after witnessing their ineffectiveness. During one confrontation, he had fired his crystalline beam at an approaching zombie, only to watch in horror as it slowed the creature for mere seconds before it lunged at a nearby soldier. "Commander Mai is right," Rick admitted. "We need kinetic force, something that can physically destroy the brain." The turning point came when they discovered that General Loraz had secretly converted a retirement home into an illegal research facility. A group of high-ranking Jorath officials were exploiting the chaos, harvesting zombie blood for black market sales, creating additional infection clusters in the process. "They're profiting from this disaster," Ve said in disgust as they reviewed the evidence. Mai's response was immediate and severe. She led a strike team to raid the facility, neutralizing both the corrupt officials and the infected specimens they had been harvesting. Loraz, confronted with evidence of his people's corruption, finally began to see the value in Earth's approach. "Perhaps we have been overconfident in our medical superiority," he admitted reluctantly. "What do you recommend, Commander?" "Full military containment of all infected zones," Mai replied, "and complete support for Dr. Dong's vaccine efforts." During the third night of the outbreak, a critical moment arrived. The underground reservoir storing sulfur compounds beneath the laboratory exploded, the result of Loraz's order to destroy it to prevent sample theft. Dong found herself racing against time to save her vaccine prototype as the building began to collapse around her. "We can't lose this," she shouted to Shiva as they gathered critical samples. "It's our only hope." The explosion rocked the facility, but they managed to secure the prototype serum just in time. Initial tests showed it could provide about 70% protection against infection. Not perfect, but enough to begin slowing the outbreak's spread. Meanwhile, Mai faced her most difficult battle yet. A massive horde had surrounded the field hospital, threatening to break through at multiple points. With ammunition running low and casualties mounting, she made a desperate gamble, breaking the water channel to wash away a group of zombies. Then, setting fire to the city gates to create a line of defense. The sight of children among the casualties haunted her. For all her tactical experience, Mai could not escape the human cost of her decisions. That night, she stood alone on the hospital roof, looking out at the burning city. V found her there, his own face grim with memories. "You did what was necessary," he said quietly. "Did I?" Mai asked. "Or am I just repeating the same mistakes we made on Earth?" "This isn't like Earth," V replied. "We have a chance here. Dr. Dong's serum is working. We're learning faster this time." During the fourth day, Shiva made a devastating discovery. She had been infected while administering the test serum to Jorath residents. The Quellian healer, who had argued so passionately for saving every life, now faced becoming what she feared most. "I need to be quarantined," she told Dong, her voice steady despite her fear. "And you need to observe how the virus progresses in my system. It might help perfect the vaccine." Dong protested, but Shiva was resolute. "My people believe in sacrifice for the greater good. Let my infection serve a purpose." Shiva's sacrifice provided critical data, allowing Dong to refine the serum further. With Rick's help, they developed a distribution method that could cover large areas quickly. As the fifth day dawned, the tide began to turn. The preliminary serum had been distributed to most uninfected residents, creating a buffer that slowed the virus's spread. Military containment zones had successfully isolated the major infection clusters. In a moment of quiet reflection, Mai visited the makeshift memorial that had been established on the hospital's upper terrace. Among the photographs of the fallen was one of her brother, a reminder of her personal stake in this fight. "If the aliens won't save themselves," she whispered to the photograph, "then humans will save the galaxy." After a week of relentless effort, Jorath began the slow process of recovery. The city remained under strict quarantine, with field hospitals providing long-term care and isolation for the infected. The death toll was staggering, but the outbreak had been contained. Dong and Shiva, who had survived her infection thanks to an experimental treatment, worked together to perfect the vaccine protocol, preparing for mass production. When Mai, Dong, and Vei returned to the Harmony for the Concord Council meeting, the reception was markedly different. The council chamber fell silent as they entered, the alien representatives watching with newfound respect. The council president addressed the assembly. In recognition of Earth's critical role in containing the Jorath outbreak, we hereby authorize the formation of an interplanetary pandemic response alliance to be led by human representatives. As the council erupted in applause, Mai's gaze drifted to the nebula visible through the massive windows. The stars seemed brighter somehow, the future less uncertain. The Jorath outbreak had taught the conquered a painful lesson about complacency, about the value of Earth's hard-won experience with disaster. And for humanity, it had offered something equally valuable: acceptance, purpose, and a chance to transform their traumatic past into salvation for others. Mai's thoughts returned to her brother, to all those lost in Earth's own zombie apocalypse. Their sacrifices had not been in vain. The knowledge purchased with their lives would now protect countless species across the galaxy. As Mai stood before the council to accept their commission, she made a silent promise to the memory of those who had fallen. This time, they would be ready. This time, they would save more than they lost. And perhaps, in saving others, humanity would finally find its place among the stars. The dawn broke over Jora City, casting long shadows across streets that had once run red with blood. Commander Mai stood at the field hospital's observation deck, watching as cleanup crews worked methodically through the ruins. 7 days had passed since they'd landed on Jorath. 7 days of hell that had changed everything. Commander, Major Vey approached, his uniform still bearing the stains of yesterday's confrontation. The latest reports from the Eastern District. Infection rates have dropped by 60% since we implemented Dr. Dong's serum distribution. Mai nodded, taking the datapad without comment. Her eyes scanned the numbers, searching for hope in the statistics. After decades of military service, she had learned to find meaning in the cold precision of data rather than emotion. "And the casualties?" she finally asked. Vey's expression darkened. 3,000 confirmed dead. Another 2,000 missing, presumed infected. 5,000, Mai whispered. Out of a city of 50,000. 10%. She handed the pad back to Vey. Better than Earth's first outbreak. We lost 30% in the initial wave. The comparison offered little comfort. Every percentage point represented lives, families torn apart, communities shattered, futures erased. Mai had spent the night reviewing footage from the security drones, watching as her tactical decisions played out in blood and fire. The cargo tractor incident haunted her most. The screams of those caught in the blast still echoed in her mind. "You made the right call," Vey said, reading her thoughts. "If those zombies had reached the hospital—" "I know," Mai cut him off. She didn't need justification. She needed results. "What's the status of the vaccine production?" "Dr. Dong has the preliminary batch ready. They're beginning distribution to the emergency personnel first, then moving outward in concentric circles from the containment zones." Mai turned from the window. "I want to see the process. Take me to the lab." The makeshift laboratory had evolved significantly since their arrival. What had begun as a chaotic assembly of portable equipment had expanded into a comprehensive research facility, with samples categorized and analyzed, data streams flowing across multiple screens, and a small production line for the serum already operational. Dr. Dong looked up as they entered, her exhausted face brightening slightly. "Commander, I was about to call you." "Progress?" Mai asked, moving to examine the production units. "Better than expected," Dong replied. "The serum's effectiveness has increased to nearly 75% with our latest refinements. We're still seeing breakthrough infections, but they're less severe, less contagious." Shiva sat in a quarantine chamber nearby, her scaled skin paler than normal, but her 6 arms moving with purpose as she analyzed data on a tablet. The transparent barrier between her and the rest of the laboratory was a stark reminder of her sacrifice. "Shiva's antibody response has been crucial," Dong continued. The Quellian physiology processes the virus differently than other species. It's given us insights we wouldn't have had otherwise. Mai approached the quarantine chamber, placing her hand against the transparent barrier. Shiva looked up, meeting her eyes with a calm acceptance that humbled the commander. "You're responding to treatment?" Mai asked. Shiva nodded. "The virus progression has slowed considerably. Dr. Dong believes I may make a full recovery, given time." "I'm glad," Mai said, and meant it. Despite their philosophical differences regarding containment methods, she had come to respect the Quellian healer's dedication and courage. "Your methods," Shiva said hesitantly. "The violence of your response. I did not understand it at first." Mai waited, sensing there was more. "When I watched the footage of the hospital defense, saw what happened when the zombies breached the north wing," Shiva's voice faltered. "The medical staff had no chance. No warning. 50 healers lost in minutes." "That's what we faced on Earth," Mai said quietly. "Not just soldiers dying, but doctors, nurses, researchers, the very people we needed most to fight the disease." "I understand now," Shiva said. "Sometimes healing requires difficult choices." Their moment of understanding was interrupted as Rick burst into the laboratory, his crystalline form pulsing with urgent light patterns. "Commander, we've detected movement in the quarantine zone," the Corellan scientist reported. "Large-scale, coordinated movement." Mai's attention immediately shifted. "Show me." Rick projected a holographic display from his crystalline structure, showing thermal readings of the central quarantine zone, a section of the city that had been sealed off due to high infection rates. "The infected are gathering," Rick explained. "They appear to be working together." Mai studied the patterns with growing concern. During Earth's outbreak, the infected had occasionally demonstrated rudimentary herd behaviors, but nothing like the organized movements she was seeing now. "They're probing the barriers," she realized aloud, "testing for weaknesses." "That's impossible," Vei said. "Zombies don't strategize." "These do," Mai replied grimly. "Dr. Dong, what are we looking at here?" Dong moved to examine the data, her scientific mind already racing through possibilities. The virus might be affecting different neural pathways in Gerathian physiology. Their collective intelligence system could be partially intact despite the infection. "Meaning," Mai pressed, "meaning they retain some capacity for group coordination, possibly even primitive problem-solving." Mai's decision was immediate. "V, get our combat team assembled. Rick, I need detailed scans of all barrier points. We're going to reinforce the quarantine zone before they find a way out." As they prepared to leave, Dr. Dong caught Mai's arm. "Commander, there's something else you should know. I've been examining the virus's mutation rate, and it's unprecedented. The strain we're seeing now is already different from what we first encountered." "Different how?" "More aggressive. More efficient at neurological takeover." Dong hesitated. "And potentially capable of jumping to new species that were previously resistant." The implications were clear and terrifying. A virus that could adapt to new hosts, that could coordinate its carrier's actions, represented a threat beyond anything they had prepared for. "Keep working on the vaccine," Mai ordered. "We need something more effective, and we need it yesterday." Within an hour, Mai led a reinforcement team to the quarantine zone's perimeter. The massive barriers that had been erected around the most heavily infected area of the city loomed before them. 15 meters of composite materials designed to contain both the infected and the airborne virus particles. General Loraz met them at the command post, his earlier arrogance notably diminished. "Commander Mai, your timing is fortunate. We've detected multiple breach attempts in the past hour." May reviewed the tactical display. "They're concentrating on the southeast section." "Why there?" "It's where the barrier connects to the old city wall," Loraz explained. "A potential structural weakness." "Or they remember it," Mai suggested. "Some part of their pre-infection knowledge might still be accessible." Loraz looked disturbed by the possibility. What are your recommendations? Double the guard rotation. Set up overlapping fields of fire. And prepare for emergency sealing procedures in case they break through. Mai turned to Ve. I want our heaviest weapons positioned here, and here. 3 layers of defense. As night fell, an eerie silence descended over the quarantine zone. The moans and shrieks that had become the soundtrack of their mission were suddenly absent, replaced by a tension that wound tighter with each passing minute. They're waiting for something, Mai murmured, scanning the darkness beyond the barrier with enhanced optics. Full darkness, perhaps, Loraz suggested. Most Gerathians have excellent night vision. The attack came just after midnight, not at the southeast section where they had been probing, but simultaneously at 3 different points along the perimeter. Hundreds of infected hurled themselves at the barriers, their combined weight and determination creating stress points in the structure. They fainted, Mai realized with grim admiration. Tactical misdirection. She quickly redirected their defenses, but the coordinated assault had caught them off guard. At the northern point, the barrier began to buckle under the relentless pressure. Ve, northern section needs reinforcement now, Mai ordered, already running toward the threatened area. They arrived to find the barrier on the verge of collapse, the material warping as dozens of infected pushed against it from the other side. Mai assessed the situation in seconds. Explosive charges, she decided. Blow the approach ramp. It'll create a secondary containment gap if the barrier fails. V nodded, immediately organizing the demolition team. As they worked to place the charges, the barrier groaned and flexed inward. 30 seconds, V shouted. It won't hold that long, Mai replied, raising her rifle. Everyone prepare to engage. Remember your training, headshots only, controlled bursts. The barrier gave way with a thunderous crack, and the infected poured through the breach. Mai's team opened fire, dropping the first wave, but more kept coming. Fall back to position 2, Mai ordered. Controlled retreat. They withdrew in precise formation, maintaining constant fire as they moved toward the secondary defense line. Just as they reached it, V's demolition team detonated the charges. The approach ramp collapsed in a cloud of dust and debris, creating a chasm that temporarily halted the zombie advance. Seal the breach, Mai commanded, and heavy machinery moved into position, deploying a temporary barrier to close the gap in the perimeter. For now, the crisis had been averted. But Mai knew they had been lucky. The infected were learning, adapting. Traditional containment might not hold them much longer. As dawn broke, Mai returned to the field hospital to find Dr. Dong waiting with new developments. The coordinated behavior, Dong said without preamble. I think I understand it now. The virus isn't just affecting individual brains. It's creating a rudimentary hive mind. The infected are connected, sharing information. Like a neural network, Mai said, the tactical implications immediately clear. That's why they're getting smarter, more coordinated. Exactly. And it gets worse. The virus is using this network to accelerate its own evolution. Every new host, every new species infected, adds to its adaptability. Mai absorbed this information, her mind racing through scenarios. What about the vaccine? Can we counter this? I'm working on a new approach, Dong replied. Instead of trying to prevent infection entirely, we target the neural connection mechanism, break the network, isolate the infected from each other. How soon? 2 days, maybe 3, but I need more data on how the network functions. Mai nodded. I'll get it for you. The mission to gather the necessary data was dangerous, but essential. Mai selected a small team, herself, V, Rick, and 2 Earth specialists with experience in neural mapping. They would enter the quarantine zone, deploy sensor packages to monitor the hive mind's electromagnetic signatures, and extract without engaging the infected if possible. They entered through a maintenance tunnel, moving silently through the abandoned streets of what had once been Jorah's cultural district. Buildings that had housed theaters and museums now stood silent, their windows shattered, doors hanging open like gaping wounds. "First sensor placement here," Mai whispered, indicating a central intersection. Rick moved forward, his crystalline form configured to minimize reflections as he deployed the sophisticated monitoring equipment. They had placed 3 of the 5 sensors when they encountered the first group of infected, a dozen Gerathians standing motionless in what had once been a marketplace. Unlike the frenzied attackers they had faced at the barrier, these zombies were quiet, almost contemplative. "They're not attacking," Va murmured. "Why?" "They're communicating," Rick suggested, his sensors picking up subtle electromagnetic pulses, sharing information through the network. Mai raised her hand for silence, observing the infected carefully. Something about their behavior felt wrong, too controlled, too purposeful. "They know we're here," she realized. "They're waiting for something." As if in response to her words, the infected turned as one, their eyes focusing on the team's position. But instead of attacking, they began to move away, disappearing down side streets and alleyways. "They're retreating?" Vey asked, confused. "No," Mai replied, a cold certainty settling in her gut. "They're surrounding us." Her tactical display confirmed it. Motion signatures appeared on all sides, closing in a coordinated pattern designed to cut off their escape routes. "Move!" Mai ordered. "Back to the tunnel, now!" They ran, abandoning stealth for speed. But it was already too late. At every intersection, infected Gerathians blocked their path, forcing them to detour through buildings and alleyways, driving them deeper into the quarantine zone. "They're hurting us," Vey realized as they found themselves in a large open plaza with limited exits. "The central hub," Rick added, his sensors still active. "This is where the electromagnetic activity is strongest, the center of the network." The plaza had once been beautiful, a circular space surrounded by elegant buildings, with a fountain at its center. Now, it was a nightmare landscape of abandoned vehicles, makeshift barricades, and dark stains that spoke of violent ends. And they were not alone. From every street leading into the plaza, infected Gerathians emerged, moving with slow purpose, their eyes fixed on the team. But they did not attack. Instead, they formed a circle, watching. "What are they waiting for?" one of the Earth specialists whispered. The answer came in the form of a single figure that emerged from the largest building facing the plaza. Unlike the other infected, this one moved with grace, almost elegance. It had been a Gerathian of high status, judging by its ornate clothing, now torn and bloodied. "That's Counselor Thar," Rick said in shock. He was one of the first reported infected, the head of Girath's Science Council. The infected counselor stopped at the edge of the fountain, regarding them with eyes that held something more than the mindless hunger they had come to expect. There was calculation there, perhaps even recognition. "It's the Alpha," Mai said quietly, "the focal point of the network." As if confirming her assessment, the counselor raised a hand, and the circle of infected took a synchronized step forward. "Options?" Vey asked, his weapon raised. Mai assessed their situation with cold precision. They were outnumbered at least 50-1, with no clear escape route. But they also had an unprecedented opportunity. "The sensor," she said to Rick. "The last one. Can you configure it to disrupt their network?" Rick's crystalline form pulsed as he considered. "Temporarily. Perhaps. A focused electromagnetic pulse might interrupt the signals, but I'd need to amplify it significantly." "The fountain," Mai suggested. "The water circulation system could distribute the effect." "It might work," Rick agreed. "But I'd need time to set it up, and we'd need to be gone before it activates. The pulse would fry our communications and possibly our weapons too." Mai made her decision. You and the specialist provide covering fire. Rick, get that pulse ready. I'll create a diversion." Before anyone could object, Mai stepped forward, directly addressing the infected counselor. You understand me, don't you? Some part of you is still thinking, still planning. The counselor's head tilted slightly, an unsettlingly human gesture of curiosity. You've evolved, Mai continued, taking another step forward. Adapted, but so have we. She needed to keep the Alpha's attention fixed on her, away from Rick as he worked on the pulse device. Out of the corner of her eye, she could see him moving slowly toward the fountain, his crystalline form partially concealed by V's position. On Earth, we face something like you, Mai said, taking another calculated step. We lost millions before we learned how to fight back. But we did learn. The counselor took a step toward her, and the circle of infected tensed, ready to move. Now! Mai shouted, diving to the side as Vey and the specialists opened fire, creating chaos and confusion. The infected surged forward, but their coordinated movement had been disrupted by the sudden violence. Mai rolled to her feet, firing precise shots to clear a path toward one of the streets leading from the plaza. Rick, she called. Status? 10 seconds, the Corellan replied, his form glowing brightly as he channeled energy into the device, now submerged in the fountain. Mai and V fought back to back, their weapons cutting down infected that came too close, but they were being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. 5 seconds, Rick shouted. Get clear of the plaza! They ran for the nearest exit, the Earth specialists ahead, Vey and Mai providing covering fire as they retreated. Rick was the last to break away, his crystalline form flashing with energy as he completed the device's activation. Down, Mai ordered, as they reached the relative shelter of a narrow street. They threw themselves to the ground, just as a wave of electromagnetic energy pulsed outward from the plaza. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The pursuing infected stumbled, their movements suddenly uncoordinated, their shared purpose dissolved into individual confusion. Some fell to the ground, others began wandering aimlessly, while a few continued their pursuit with greatly reduced effectiveness. It worked, Rick said, his own systems temporarily dimmed by the pulse. The network is disrupted. For how long? Mai asked as they regained their feet. Minutes, perhaps an hour at most, but they'll adapt. Then we move fast, Mai decided, back to the tunnel. They made it back to the extraction point with minimal resistance. The infected they encountered behaving more like traditional zombies, dangerous but predictable, lacking the coordinated intelligence that had nearly trapped them. Once back at the field hospital, they downloaded the sensor data they had managed to collect. Despite the mission's complications, they had obtained critical information about the neural network's function. Dr. Dong worked through the night, analyzing the data and refining her new vaccine approach. By morning, she had a prototype ready for testing. It targets the virus's communication mechanism, she explained to Mai, V, and the other team leaders. Instead of trying to prevent infection entirely, it isolates the infected from the network. Without the hive mind, they revert to basic zombie behavior, dangerous but manageable with traditional containment. How soon can we deploy it? Mai asked. I can have the first batch ready in 12 hours. But there's a complication. Dong's expression was troubled. The most effective delivery method would be aerosol dispersion throughout the quarantine zone. We'd need to get to the city's environmental control center, which is inside the quarantine zone, V concluded. Central District, Loraz confirmed, the heart of the infected territory. Mai studied the city map, considering their options. A small team could reach it through the underground maintenance tunnels, minimal contact, maximum speed. I'll go, Dong said immediately. The system will need calibration for the vaccine to disperse properly. Mai shook her head. Too risky. You're too valuable. There's no one else qualified, Dong interrupted. The environmental systems are complex, and the vaccine dispersion needs to be precisely controlled. It has to be me. After brief consideration, Mai nodded. All right, but you'll have a full security detail. V, assemble a team of our best. Rick, We'll need your sensors to track the infected network's recovery. We need to time this perfectly. Hit them while they're still disorganized. Shiva spoke up from her quarantine chamber, where she had been monitoring the discussion. I should go too. Everyone turned to look at her in surprise. You're infected, Mai pointed out. And still in treatment. Exactly, Shiva replied. I'm infected but functional because of Dr. Dong's treatments. The infected might not register me as a threat. I could provide a critical advantage. Dr. Dong considered this. She's right. The vaccine I've been treating her with has suppressed the network's influence, without eliminating the infection markers. She might be able to move among them undetected. Mai weighed the risks against the potential benefits. Are you sure about this, Shiva? The treatment could fail under stress. I am sure, the Quellian healer replied with dignity. My people believe that healing sometimes requires personal sacrifice. This is my contribution. The mission was set for that night. While the main force would create a diversion at the quarantine zone's perimeter, Mai would lead Dong, Shiva, and a small security team through the maintenance tunnels to the Environmental Control Center. As they prepared, Mai found a moment alone with Dong. The serum for Shiva. How confident are you in its stability? Dong's hesitation was brief, but noticeable. 80%. The virus is still active in her system, just suppressed, under stress or with elevated adrenaline. She could revert, Mai finished the thought. Join the network. Yes, but she knows the risk. Mai nodded, adding another layer to her tactical planning. She sought out Vei privately afterward. If Shiva turns during the mission, she said quietly, you know what needs to be done. Vei's expression was grim but resigned. I understand. The mission began under cover of darkness. While General Loraz led a large force in a choreographed assault on the eastern perimeter, designed to draw the infected's attention without actually breaching containment, Mai's team slipped into the maintenance tunnels beneath the city. The tunnels were narrow and poorly lit, designed for utility rather than human comfort. They moved in single file, with Mai leading and Vei bringing up the rear. Dr. Dong and Shiva were in the middle, protected on all sides. Network status? Mai whispered to Rick, who was monitoring their surroundings with his specialized sensors. Still fragmented, the Corellan replied, but showing signs of reorganization. We have perhaps 30 minutes before they're fully coordinated again. They had covered half the distance to the Environmental Control Center when they encountered their first obstacle, a tunnel collapse that blocked their planned route. Alternative? Mai asked, consulting the city schematics they had memorized. Service shaft B7, V suggested. It adds 5 minutes, but should be clear. The detour took them through an even narrower passage, forcing them to crawl in sections. Mai felt the press of time with each delay, knowing the infected network was reforming, becoming more dangerous with each passing minute. They were approaching the access point to the environmental center when Rick's sensors picked up movement above. Multiple signatures, he reported. Directly overhead, they're gathering. They sense us, Shiva said, her voice strained. The network. I can feel it trying to reconnect with the virus in my system. Mai made an instant decision. New plan, Shiva. Can you guide Dr. Dong to the control center? Use your connection to avoid the infected. The Quellian hesitated, then nodded. I believe so. The pull is strongest away from concentrations of infected. I can navigate around them. Good. You two will proceed to the objective. The rest of us will create a diversion. Draw them away from your path. Mai turned to Vei. 5 minutes of chaos. Then withdraw to extraction point 2. Rendezvous with Dong and Shiva at the southern tunnel junction in 30 minutes. V nodded, understanding the implied secondary mission. Ensure Shiva didn't compromise the objective if she turned. They separated at the next junction, with Shiva leading Dong toward the environmental center, while Mai's team prepared to create their diversion. Remote detonators here and here, Mai instructed. placing small explosive charges at structural points that would create noise and confusion without causing catastrophic damage. On my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. The explosions rumbled through the underground complex, sending vibrations up to the streets above. Almost immediately, they heard the response, the shuffling movement of dozens of infected, drawn to the disturbance. "Move!" Mai ordered, leading her team in the opposite direction from Dong and Shiva's path. They emerged onto a street level that was eerily empty, the infected having been drawn toward the diversion. Mai led them in a weaving pattern through abandoned buildings, creating periodic disturbances to maintain the infected's attention. Meanwhile, Shiva guided Dr. Dong through quieter streets, her connection to the network serving as an early warning system. They reached the Environmental Control Center with minimal contact, slipping through a service entrance that had been overlooked in the chaos of the initial outbreak. The control center was a marvel of engineering, a circular room filled with monitoring stations, atmospheric processors, and the central distribution system that regulated air quality throughout the city. Dong immediately went to work, connecting her vaccine dispersion unit to the main system. "How long?" Shiva asked, standing guard at the entrance, visibly struggling against the virus's influence. 10 minutes to calibrate. 2 minutes to disperse," Dong replied, her fingers flying across the control panels. "Can you hold out that long?" Shiva's scales had taken on a feverish sheen. "I will try." Outside, Mai's diversion had served its purpose, perhaps too well. They found themselves cornered in a municipal building, surrounded by infected that were showing increasing signs of coordination. "The network's reforming faster than expected," Rick warned. "They're communicating again." Mai assessed their situation. They had drawn the infected away from Dong and Shiva's path, but now needed to extract themselves before the hive mind fully recovered. "Rooftop," she decided. "We'll cross to the adjacent building and descend through the interior stairwell." They fought their way up to the roof, the infected close behind. As they prepared to jump the gap to the next building, Mai looked back and froze momentarily. Among the pursuing infected was the counselor, the alpha she had faced in the plaza. It moved with purpose, directing others with subtle gestures, and its eyes were fixed directly on Mai, with what could only be described as recognition. "It remembers," she murmured, disturbed by the implication. "Commander," Vey called urgently, "we need to move." Mai turned away from the alpha's unsettling gaze and made the jump to the next building. They descended through the emergency stairwell, encountering only scattered infected that they dispatched efficiently. At the Environmental Control Center, Dong had nearly completed the calibration when Shiva suddenly stiffened. "They know we're here," the Quellian said, her voice strained. "The network, it's calling to me, stronger now." Dong worked faster, aware of the deteriorating situation. "Almost done. Just hold on a little longer." Shiva moved to the entrance, positioning herself in the narrow doorway. "I will delay them. Complete your work, Doctor." Outside, the sound of approaching infected grew louder. Shiva braced herself, her 6 arms spread in a defensive posture as the first zombies appeared at the end of the corridor. "Hurry," she urged Dong, her voice deepening as the virus fought for control of her system. Dong made the final adjustments and activated the dispersion system. "Done. The vaccine is entering the air circulation. It will reach the entire quarantine zone within minutes." She turned to find Shiva blocking the doorway, not from the infected outside, but preventing Dong from leaving. "Shiva?" Dong asked cautiously, noting the Quellian's rigid posture. "The network," Shiva managed through clenched teeth. "It's taking control. I can't fight it much longer." Dong reached for her sidearm, but Shiva shook her head. "No, lock me in. The circulation system will deliver the vaccine to me too. Might bring me back." "I can't just leave you." "You must," Shiva's voice was desperate. Complete the mission. Save what can be saved. With heartbreaking clarity, Dong understood. She stepped forward, placing a hand on Shiva's shoulder. Thank you, my friend. Then, she slipped past the Quellion and sealed the door from the outside, locking Shiva in with the dispersion system as the infected approached from both directions. Dong ran, using the route Shiva had mapped for her, and reached the rendezvous point just as Mai's team arrived from their diversion. Shiva? Mai asked immediately, noting the healer's absence. She stayed behind, Dong replied, her voice tight with emotion. To ensure the dispersion, she was turning. Mai absorbed this news with a grim nod. Another sacrifice in a war that demanded too many. The vaccine? Dispersing now. We should see effects within hours. They returned to the field hospital as dawn broke over Jora City. The vaccine dispersal had been successful, spreading throughout the quarantine zone and beginning the process of severing the hive mind's connections. Without their coordinated intelligence, the infected became manageable again. Dangerous, but predictable. Containable with conventional methods. Over the next 3 days, military teams moved through the quarantine zone, neutralizing the isolated infected and rescuing survivors who had been hiding since the outbreak began. The death toll was severe, nearly 5,000 lost, but the city had been saved from complete destruction. In the aftermath, a somber ceremony was held at the field hospital, honoring those who had fallen. Among the photographs displayed was one of Shiva, her sacrifice acknowledged by all. To everyone's shock and joy, Shiva herself was found alive the following day, unconscious but alive. Her system having responded to the concentrated vaccine in the control center. The virus had been neutralized in her body, though her recovery would be long and difficult. As the immediate crisis passed, Mai found herself standing once again in the Harmony's Grand Council chamber. The reception was markedly different this time. Respectful silence instead of dismissive murmurs. Attentive faces instead of distracted dignitaries. The council president addressed the assembly. The events on Jarath have demonstrated a critical vulnerability in our collective security. For too long, we have dismissed the experiences of Earth as primitive or irrelevant. That arrogance nearly cost us a member world. The president turned to Mai, Dong, and Ve. In recognition of humanity's vital contribution, and to ensure our preparedness for future threats, the Council hereby establishes the Interplanetary Pandemic Response Alliance, to be led by Earth representatives with Commander Mai as its first director. As applause filled the chamber, Mai found her gaze drawn to the nebula visible through the massive windows, the same view she had contemplated when they first arrived, feeling unwelcome and unvalued. Now, humanity had found its place in the conquered, not despite its traumatic history but because of it. Later, in a quiet moment on the observation deck, Mai stood with Dong and Vei, watching the stars. Do you think they understand yet? Dong asked. What we learned on Earth. That survival sometimes requires sacrifice, Mai replied. I think they're beginning to... And that preparation isn't paranoia, Vei added. It's wisdom. Mai nodded, her thoughts turning to her brother, to all those lost in Earth's own battle against the undead. Their sacrifices had not been in vain. The knowledge purchased with their lives would now protect countless species across the galaxy. As she stood there, Mai made a silent promise to the memory of those who had fallen. This time, they would be ready. This time, they would save more than they lost. And perhaps, in saving others, humanity would finally heal its own wounds. In the months that followed the Jarath outbreak, the newly formed Interplanetary Pandemic Response Alliance transformed from concept to reality. Commander Mai oversaw the establishment of training facilities across conquered space, teaching containment techniques, emergency response protocols, and survival strategies that humans had learned through blood and sacrifice. Dr. Dong led the scientific division, creating a comprehensive database of viral threats and potential countermeasures. Her work with Shiva, who had recovered enough to serve as liaison to the Quellian medical community, bridged ancient healing traditions with cutting-edge science. Major Vey coordinated logistics and supply chains, ensuring that emergency resources could be deployed to any world within 48 hours, the critical window they had identified for effective containment. On Jorath itself, reconstruction proceeded under General Loraz's supervision. The general, humbled by the experience, had become an unexpected ally, implementing Earth-inspired defense measures and public health systems that would prevent such devastation in the future. 6 months after the outbreak, Mai returned to Jorath for the dedication of a memorial in the Central Plaza, the same location where they had disrupted the zombie network. The plaza had been transformed, the fountain rebuilt, and surrounded by a garden of remembrance. As Mai walked through the gathered crowd, a mix of Jorathians, Earth personnel, and representatives from across the Concord, she felt the weight of both accomplishment and responsibility. The memorial would honor the fallen, but it would also serve as a reminder of vigilance. The ceremony was simple, but powerful. Names were read, stories shared, sacrifices acknowledged. Mai stood at attention as General Loraz unveiled the central monument, a crystalline structure designed by Rick that captured and refracted light in patterns representing the interconnected nature of all species. In remembrance, Loraz intoned, and in gratitude to those who taught us that true strength lies not in isolation, but in unity. After the ceremony, Mai found herself alone at the monument, studying the names etched into its base. Among them were Earth personnel who had fallen during the containment efforts, their sacrifice far from home, now permanently honored on an alien world. "Commander," a voice spoke behind her. Mai turned to find Dr. Dong approaching, accompanied by Shiva, who moved slowly but steadily, her recovery progressing well. "Doctor, Healer Shiva," Mai greeted them. "The monument is beautiful." "Rick outdid himself," Dong agreed. "He said it represents not just those we lost, but the networks that connect us all, the good ones, not the virus kind." Shiva touched the crystalline surface gently. "My people believe that no one truly dies, while their actions continue to affect others. By that measure, these souls are very much alive." Mai nodded, finding unexpected comfort in the Quellian philosophy. "Have you received the latest reports from the monitoring stations?" "Yes," Dong replied. "No sign of viral resurgence. The vaccine has been completely effective at neutralizing the network capability. Individual infections can still occur, but without the hive mind, they're isolated and manageable." "And the Alpha?" Mai asked, thinking of the infected counselor with its unsettling intelligence. "Neutralized," Dong assured her. "We found its body in the Eastern District. The vaccine disrupted the network completely." Mai should have felt relieved, but something in her remained vigilant, cautious. Earth's experience had taught them that complacency was as dangerous as any virus. "We should continue monitoring," she said, "and expand the early detection system to other worlds." "Already in progress," Dong replied. "The Council has approved our proposal for a galaxy-wide surveillance network. Early warning beacons are being deployed to all member worlds." Their conversation was interrupted as Vey joined them, his expression suggesting urgent news. "Commander," he said, keeping his voice low, "we've received a preliminary report from the colony on Meridian. Possible infection markers, similar to what we saw here." Mai's mind immediately shifted to tactical assessment. "Confirmed cases?" "Not yet, but the pattern of behavioral changes, the neurological symptoms, it's consistent with early-stage infection." "How far is Meridian from Jorath?" Mai asked, already calculating response times. 3 days at maximum speed, V replied. "I've already alerted the rapid response team to prepare for deployment." Mai nodded, turning to Dong. "Doctor, we'll need you to review the medical data immediately. if this is the same virus. I'll start now, Dong said, already moving toward their ship. We'll need to adapt the vaccine for Meridian's atmospheric conditions. As they prepared to depart, Shiva stepped forward. I should come as well. My immunity to the virus could prove valuable again. Mai considered the Quellian's still recovering condition. Are you certain? Your recovery is progressing well, Shiva finished firmly. And I have unique insights into this virus that no one else possesses. I experienced its influence from within. The logic was sound, and Mai had learned to respect Shiva's determination. Very well, we leave in 1 hour. As they walked back toward their ship, the setting sun cast long shadows across Jora City, a place forever changed by its encounter with death and resurrection. The rebuilt structures stood as testament to resilience, to the possibility of recovery after devastation. Mai thought of Earth, of the cities rebuilt after their own zombie apocalypse, of the memorial gardens and the lessons written in blood. Now those lessons would serve to protect worlds beyond their own, giving meaning to a history of suffering. Aboard the ship, as they prepared for departure to Meridian, Mai called her team together for a briefing. Earth specialists, Concord representatives, and their core leadership gathered in the command center. What we face on Meridian may be similar to Jorath, or it may be something entirely new, Mai told them. But whatever awaits us, remember this. We are prepared. We have faced the worst and survived. We have turned our scars into shields. She looked at each face, human and alien alike, seeing determination reflected back at her. They had formed something powerful together, something that transcended species and history. The Conquered has known peace for centuries, Mai continued. That peace made them vulnerable to threats they couldn't imagine. Earth knew no such luxury. We learned through fire, through loss, through hard choices made in desperate moments. She activated the display showing Meridian, their destination, a beautiful world of oceans and archipelagos, home to millions who might even now be facing the first stages of infection. Now we bring that knowledge to bear again, Mai said. Not just for humanity, but for all species. Because if the Jorath incident taught us anything, it's that we are stronger together than apart. As the ship broke orbit, accelerating toward Meridian and whatever awaited them there, Mai stood at the viewport, watching Jorath recede into the distance. She thought of her brother, of his face in those final moments, of the promise she had made to his memory. We're ready this time, she whispered to the stars, and we won't face it alone. The ship entered hyperspace, carrying humanity's hard-won wisdom to worlds beyond their own, a legacy of suffering transformed into salvation, of trauma reforged as strength. In the darkness between stars, Commander Mai allowed herself a moment of hope. The dead would not rise unopposed again. Not on Earth, not on Jorath, not anywhere in the galaxy, not while she had breath in her body and the lessons of the past to guide her. As Harmony's council president had said, in words that still echoed in Mai's mind, if the aliens won't save themselves, then humans will save the galaxy. And they would, one world at a time,